Lesson number 8, describing data presentation and constructing frequency distribution table. Lesson objectives at the end of this module, you should be able to identify different data presentation and construct table for frequency distribution. Collecting and presenting data is very important, knowing that all scientific facts are supported by true data. In statistics, one of the most important aspects in a statistical process for the researcher is to gather correct data and present it in a way that readers can understand easily. Basically, data can be presented in various models such as textual, tabular, and graphical display. So in this module, you will learn to describe and analyze ungroup and group data in textual or tabular form. You will also explore in organizing ungroup data into frequency distribution table format. The knowledge you will gain here will be necessary in interpreting data in the future. Here are the types of data presentation. We actually have three, textual, tabular, and graphical. Textual data presentation, it composed of text, phrases, and paragraphs. And this is narrative in nature. While tabular data presentation, it is horizontal and in vertical form, or we have the rows and columns kasi naka-table form siya. And this is most effective way of showing relationships. And the last one is the graphical, contains lines, bars, and pictures. Of course, it includes the line graph, bar graph, pictograph, also the pie chart. And this easily catches attention. This module will focus on the first two types, the textual and the tabular. So this is an example of a textual presentation. The title, Special Weather Outlook for the Commemoration of Independence Day, June 12, 2020. And as you can see, this is parang it's narrating about the weather outlook for the commemoration of Independence Day. And it consists text, phrases, and in paragraph form. Now, textual presentation is effective if the data to be presented is very minimal. If konti lang yung data na kailangang i-present, you can use the textual presentation. Or this is limited to fewer variables. Now, looking back at the example, most of the data mentioned are nominal scale. Writing the weather outlook in descriptive type makes the data looks more important. But when there are many variables, okay, when there are many variables, you cannot use the textual presentation. So when there are many variables and values to be presented, you can use the tabular presentation. And you may visit the Pag-asa website to see a lot of data presented in tabular and graphical form. Now let us take a look at the currency conversion table below. A tabular presentation is much better to use when the values are numeric and independent. Now, a table, okay, so you know a table that is a set of data arranged in rows. Rows, yung pahiga, and then column yung patayo. So, rows and columns, and is one of the most common way of putting information across to people. A table consists of several boxes with information inside. Now, the first row and the first column are generally used to denote the titles. And while any type of data can be presented in table form, that too in a very accurate manner, interpreting the data in table form is more difficult and time-consuming than the other modes. So all of which are basically pictorial or graphical in presentation. This is an example of a tabular presentation. So it's in table form. This is the Philippine Peso exchange rates table, top 10 for the Philippine Peso. And this is as of June 16, 2020. Now, if you want to know the Philippine Peso exchange rate for this year, 2023, you can search it on Google. But as of June 16, 2020, this is the peso exchange rate. And you can see the top 10. We have US dollar, euro, British pound, Indian rupee, Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, Singapore dollar, Swiss franc, Malaysian right, and the Japan ringgit and Japanese yen. And this is for 1 peso, the equivalent of 1 peso. And this is for the currency. Like for US dollar, in Philippine peso, it's 50.097123. The same with euro, it's 56.753519. So with the use of table, okay, so as you can see, makikita nyo kaagad kung saan yung pinakamataas or anong currency yung pinakamataas ang value in the Philippine peso. So if you observe the table, okay, so you can see that it's the British pound because it is 63.268919. And the lowest is we have Japanese yen. It's 0.46659, the lowest Philippine peso exchange rate among the top 10. Okay, so that's an example of a tabular presentation. And then the last type of data presentation, which is the graphical, it will be discussed on the next module, module number 9. Now let's proceed to the frequency distribution table. The frequency distribution is a tabulation or grouping of data into appropriate categories or classes, showing the number of observations in each group or class. Grouping data is recommended when you deal with many data. So in statistics, when we say many, this is considered to be more than 30, but not limited to this condition. Now here are the steps in constructing the frequency distribution table. Now this is the given set of data. Example, the following data set are the monthly sales in thousands of ABC store for 4 years. Since this is monthly, okay, so ma-analyze nyo kaagad from the example that this is a monthly sales in thousands. So if it's in thousands, ibig sabihin, this is 11,000, 12,000, 14,000, 15,000, 15,000, 15 hanggang kay 68,000. But ang nilagay lang is yung first two numbers kasi masyadong malalaki yung number. Now, of ABC store for 4 years, since this is monthly, so we know that there are 12 months in a year. And if it's in 4 years, so 12 times 4, that is equal to 48. So now we know that the total number, or we represent it by this letter N, yun po laging ginagamit to represent total number, N is equal to 48. Okay, so ibig sabihin, the given set of datas are 48. So even if you count that from 11 to 68, 48 po lahat yung given set of data. Yung si 11 to 68, we call that data. Okay? So therefore, N is equal to 48, or that is the total number of data. Now for the first step in constructing the frequency distribution table, or the FDT, step 0, it is suggested to arrange the data for easy counting in the next few steps. It is not required, but for you to be able to count easier for the next step, so you can arrange it from lowest to highest. But as you can observe from the given set of data, it is already arranged from lowest to highest. Nag-start siya from left, 11, 12, 14, 15, 15, 15, 17, 18, 19, 19, 23, 23. The next number is 27, 28, 29 until 39, 41 to 55, then 55 to 68. So, naka-arrange siya from left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right. So, we don't need to arrange it anymore. But if the given set of data are not arranged from lowest to highest, much better i-arrange ninyo para mas madali magbilang. After arranging the data from lowest to highest, you proceed to step number 1. You need to find the range, or that is the R of the data. Okay, so the range is the difference between the largest and the smallest number. Since the data is already arranged from lowest to highest, mas madali nating mahanap kung ano yung highest number, highest value, and lowest value. R is equal to, the highest value is 68, minus the lowest value is 11. Therefore, R is equal to 57. Next, step number 2. You need to decide the approximate number of classes. Must be between 5 and 20. Each research has given a formula for determining the approximation number of classes, or it is represented by letter K, the variable K. In this example, the total number of observation is 48. That is the total number of data, which is N. N is equal to 48. So, yun yung kailangan natin para ma-solve yung approximate number of classes. Now, the number of classes would be, okay, so this is the formula. K is equal to 1 plus 3.322 logarithm of N. So, to solve for that, so K is equal to, this is constant, you just substitute the value of N, 1 plus 3.322 logarithm, and then we have 48. So what's the value of K? K is equal to, this is actually, just entered the numbers on the calculator. 1 plus 3.322 logarithm of 48. And that is equal to 6.585. It's actually a decimal. You just get the first 3 decimal point and round it off into a whole number. And that is approximately equal to 7. Therefore, the approximate number of classes, or K, is equal to 7. Now proceed to step number 3. We need to determine the approximate class interval size, or C, and the size of class interval is obtained by dividing the range of data by the number of classes. So that's why we need to solve for the value of K and the range for us to solve the the approximate class interval size. So C, or the class interval size, is equal to range divided by the number of classes. And the solve na natin kanina, range is equal to 57. And then, divide lang natin siya by K, which is 7. So, 57 divided by 7, that is equal to 8.143. That's a long decimal. And that is the going to round off again the whole number, and 8.1, that will be 8. So C is approximately equal to 8. Yeah, so just divide the range and the number of classes, R divided by K. Now, before we continue to the next step, it is important to summarize and double check the first 3 steps, because one row step will not lead you to the frequency distribution table you wanted to obtain. Now let's summarize. R is equal to 57. K is equal to 7. And C is equal to 8. So the range is whole number if the data is whole number. Kung fraction, so fraction din siya. And then for K is equal to 7, you round off to two whole numbers. Since this is a discrete value, so number of class intervals. And always CC naman, which is equal to 8, always a whole number, and this represents the counting length of the class interval. C is also called the class size. This is the difference between two consecutive lower class limits or two consecutive upper class limits. So after we solve the R, K, and C, we proceed to step number 4. Okay, the first column of the FDT. So we now create class intervals. We set the lowest number as the starting point. So going back to the given set of data, so the highest number is, the lowest number is 11, and the highest number is 68. So since the lowest number is 11, we start with the class interval with the lowest number. Mag-start tayo by 11. Yun po yung start ng ating class interval. Now, in this example, 11 is the lowest value. So the first interval will start with 11 and end at 18. So bakit siya nag-end by 18? Because the class size required, or C, is equal to 8. Ibig sabihin, from 11, you count 8. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so yun yung first class interval natin. So there are 8 in all. So note that the number of intervals can exceed to at least one class interval if the last value of the dataset does not fall on the interval yet. So from the example, okay, the biggest value or the highest value is 68. And yung K is equal to 7, that actually indicates how many class interval are there in the table. But there are instances na pwedeng madagdagan yung class interval depending on the highest number from the given set of data. Kung hindi pa nare-reach yung highest number from the given set of data doon sa pang-pitong class interval, depende kung ano yung value ng K, we can add one more class interval or kahit more than one. Depende, basta kailangan ma-reach yung highest number. So this is the illustration. May other video po ako how to create the class interval. Okay, since C is equal to 8, to start from the lowest number. Counting po tayo ha. Huwag niyong pakikialaman yung given of set of data. Dalawa yung 11. Okay, ang ibig sabihin po nito, magbibilang. Lahat naman po tayo marunong magbilang, di ba? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So kung 11 yung pinakamababang number doon sa given set of data, ano bang susunod sa number 11? Eh di ba 12? So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And that is the first class interval. 11 to 18. Ang susulat niyo yung pinakamababa and then yung pinakamataas sa bawat class interval. And then, after ng 18, of course, ang susunod sa 18 po is 19. O magbilang kayo ulit, anong susunod sa 19? 20. So, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and then 26. And that is the second class interval. Okay, so tuloy-tuloy lang yon. Okay, so the class size, so bawat class interval, 8 po dapat lahat ng numbers. And then, K is equal to 7. So, it suggests that 7 class interval. But when we reach the 7 class interval, so as you can see, the last number from the interval is 66. And kung babalikan natin yung given set of data, the highest number is 68. Therefore, we need to add another class interval. And we will still follow the class size, which is 8. So, dapat, 8 pa rin yun. Okay, so 67 to 74. So, that's how you create the class interval. And then, just write this one. 11 to 18, 19 to 26, 27 to 34. And that is the first column of the FDT, the class interval. Now, after creating the class interval, we proceed with the tally. Okay, so when we say tally, di ba parang bilangin nyo lang naman kung ilan yung numbers na yon on the given set of data. So from here, I wrote this one. I typed the numbers. So it says that every class interval, bibilangin nyo kung ilan yung 11 to 18 from the given set of data. This is the given set of data, ulitin ko. Given set of data, 11 to 68. Ang gagawin niyo, bilangin nyo kung ilan yung 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 dito. Now, as you can see, sa first one, 11 to 18, we have 11, isa, 12, dalawa, 14, tatlo, 15, apat, 15, apat, 15, anim, 17, 7, and then 18, 8. Kasali ba si 19? Hindi. Kasi 11 to 18 lang po. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, kada number na makikita ninyo na nagpo-fall under 11 to 18 from the data, isang guhit po. That's why dito sa tally may 8 guhit dito. And that's actually the frequency. Bibilangin mo lang kung ilang guhit yan. That's 8, and that is the frequency. Frequency means ilan yung numbers na 11 to 18 doon sa given set of data. And we have 8. Ano ba yung 8 yun? We have 11, 12, 14, 15, 15, 15, 17, 18. Sana po naintindihan nyo na yung tally at sa frequency. Parehas lang po yun. Tally, para lang kayo nag-i-scoring sa volleyball. And then for 19 to 26, we have 19, sa 19, 19, 23, 23. The next number is 27. So, hindi na siya kasali doon. Ilan yun? 1, 2, 3, 4. So, 4 na guhit. Then, bilangin yung guhit. Siyempre, 4. So, we have 4 for the frequency of 19 to 26. Okay, so ganun lang po yung tally and frequency. Kaya until makarating kayo sa last class interval, which is 67 to 74, is actually 67 to 68. So that's how you get the tally and the frequency. And sa frequency, dapat pag in-add up nyo, that is equal to the total number, or the n, is equal to 48. 8 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus 8 plus 6 plus 6 plus 2, n is equal to 48. And that is the total number of data. Okay, itong buong to is 48 lahat. Kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina sa first part ng discussion. Now, after getting the tally and the frequency, yun actually yung sa third column, class frequency is the number of data that belong to its class interval. Now, distribute the data into respective classes. The total of the frequency column must be equal to the number of observation or the sample size, which is n. Okay, the sample size or the total number, n is equal to 48. So, pag hindi na total sa 48, so mali yung pagbibilang mo doon sa given set of data. Next, we have the fourth and fifth column. We have the LCB and UCB, the lower class boundary and the upper class boundary. So, lower class boundary is the middle value between the lower class limit and the upper class limit of the preceding class. And the upper class boundary is the middle value between the upper class limit and the lower class limit of the next class. So, for, remember here in the class interval, okay, the lower class limits are the lower number every class interval. So, on the first class interval, which is 11 to 18, the lower class limit is 11 and the upper class limit is 18. Okay, so ganun din, 19, tapos 26. So, the lower class limits here are the lowest numbers. We have 11, 19, 27, 35, 43, 51, 59, and 67. And for the upper class limits, we have 18, 26, 34, 42, 50, 58, 66, and then 74. Now, for the lower class boundaries, sabi kasi it's the middle value between the lower class limit and the upper class limit of the preceding class, yung magkasunod na class. So, for example, first class natin is 11 to 18 and the second class is 19 to 26. So, ano ba yung middle value between 18 at tapos yung kasunod niya is 19. So, yung middle value nila is 18.5. Okay, so, for the lower class boundaries, we have 11. Since wala naman naunang class interval kay 11 saka 18, since magkakasunod yan, di ba? 18, 19, 26, 27, 34, 35. We can assume, siguro, na yung nasa taas niya, bago si 11 is 10. So, we have 10.5. So, the middle value between 10 and 11 is 10.5. And then, middle value between 18 and 19, that's 18.5. And then, 34 and 35, 34.5. Ganon din po kay upper class boundaries. Pero para mas madali, hindi na natin naisipin kung paano nakuha yun. So, pag sa lower class boundary, you observe the table, nag-minus lang, parang nag-minus lang siya ng 0.5 doon sa lower class limits. So, here, computation. Okay, so I put it in the table, pero hindi naman po necessary. Ilalagay nyo pa isa-isa yung computation, just the final answer. So, the lower class limits are 11, 19, 27, 35, 43, 51, 59, and 67. So, just subtract 0.5. So, that will be 10.5, 18.5, 26.5, 34.5, 42.5, 50.5, 58.5, and 66.5. Since this is the lower class boundaries, so ang magma-minus kayo doon sa lower class limits, lower to lower. And then for the upper class boundary, since upper, mag-add lang tayo ng 0.5. Okay, we add 0.5. Ganun din naman yung explanation niya, bakit 18.5 or ba't ka nag-add ng plus 0.5, ma'am? Kasi it's the middle value between the upper class and the lower. And this is 19 saka 18. Ano yung nasa gitna ni 19 saka ni 18? It's 18.5. Gitna ni 27 and 26, 26.5. Gitna ni 35, 34, 43, 42, 51, 50, 59, 58, tapos 67, 66. Okay, so we have the middle value. Or, pwede rin parang nag-add lang tayo ng 0.5. So, the upper class limit, so this is upper class boundary. So, upper to upper. 18, 26, 34, 40 to 50, 58, 66, and 74. Just add 0.5. So, we have 18 plus 0.5, that's 18.5. 26 plus 0.5, 26.5 hanggang kay 74. So, 74 plus 0.5, that is 74.5. So, that's for the lower class boundaries and the upper class boundaries. So, write that one. Ayan na. Ito na siya. Si lower class, and then the upper class boundaries. Now, after that, the next column of the FDT, the sixth one, is the class mark. So, this is the average or midpoint. Okay, midpoint of the upper limit and the lower limit. When we say midpoint, at the middle. And how do we get the class mark? It can be found by adding the lower and upper limits and then dividing it by 2. Now, do not round off the class mark. So, for example, for the first class interval, we have the first class interval 11 to 18. Now, to get the class mark for that class interval, okay, so remember the lower limit is 11 and then the upper limit is 18. Okay, so 11 and then add to 18 and then we divide the result to 2. So 11 plus 18 divided by 2, I already type it on the table. So 11 plus 18 divided by 2 and that is equal to 14.5. Remember, hindi po natin siya i-round off into whole number. Kung decimal po yan, isulat nyo yung decimal. Next one, we have 19 plus 26. Okay, 19 to 26. So, add the lower limit to the class limit. Okay, so 19 plus 26 divided by 2, that is equal to 22.5. Next, 27, 34. So 27 plus 34 divided by 2, that is equal to 30.5. 35 plus 42 divided by 2, that is equal to 38.5. 43 plus 50 divided by 2, that's 46.5. And 51 plus 58 divided by 2, that's 50.5. 59 plus 66 divided by 2, that's 60.5. And lastly, 67 plus 74 divided by 2, that is equal to 70.5. O baka i-enter nyo ng buo 67 plus 74 divided by 2, iba yung lalabas sa sagot dyan. Kasi, lagyan nyo ng parenthesis muna. Or much better, you add first the lower class limit and the upper limit, 67 plus 74, saka nyo i-divide by 2. Kasi pag dinerecho nyo sa calculator, 67 plus 74 divided by 2, okay, syempre magpipemdas yun. Magdi-divide muna, saka siya mag-a-add. So, you add first the lower limit and the class limit, saka nyo i-divide by 2. And that is the class mark. Next column, or the 7th and the 8th column of the FDT, is the cumulative frequency less than and greater than. So cumulate the frequency means you need to add up the frequencies of each class interval. Now, cumulative frequency less than, this is obtained by adding the frequencies successively from the lowest to the highest interval. So when you say cumulative, successively sunod-sunod po yun. And then we have for the cumulative frequency greater than, this is obtained the frequencies by adding the frequencies successively from the highest to the lowest class interval. So we have less than, start from the lowest to the highest interval, yung frequency niya. And for cumulative frequency greater than, for greater than CF, okay, greater. So we start from the highest to the lowest class interval. O, napakadali lang pong intindihin. So for the for the less than CF, okay, less than, so we start from the lowest class interval. So, di ba, nag-create tayo ng class interval, nasa pinakauna po yung lowest, which is 11 to 18. So, you start from the class interval of the lowest class interval, 11 to 18, and the frequency of 11 to 18 is 8. Okay, so 8. So, the first thing you need to do is just copy the first number, which is 8, and then you add it successively. So, 8 plus the next frequency, which is 4. So 8 plus 4, that is 12. Now, the result you get from adding that will be the one or the number that you will add to the next frequency, not the first frequency. Kaya nga successively po. And that is cumulative. So 12 plus 6, that is 18. Then 18 plus 8, that is 26. Then 26 plus 8, that's 34. Then 34 plus 6, 40. 40 plus 6, 46. 46 plus 2, that is 48. Dapat, yung last number doon sa cumulative frequency is equal to the sample size, or N, or the total number of observation. N is equal to 48, that should be 48 yung last number. If it's not 48, then may mali po sa pag-add ninyo. Now, on the next column, we have the greater than cumulative frequency. So, if sa less than, nag-start tayo sa lowest interval. Sa greater than, mag-start tayo sa highest interval, which is 67 to 74. And ang frequency po niya is 2. So, the same process with the less than. Just copy the first number or the first frequency, which is 2. And then, add it successively. So, 2 plus 6, that is 8. And then, the result na 8, yun po yung i-add natin sa susunod na frequency. 8 plus 6, that is equal to 14. 14 plus 8, that's 22. 22 plus 8, that's 30. 30 plus 6, 36. 36 plus 4, that's 40. And then, 40 plus 8, 48. So, dapat yung last number is also equal to the number of observation or the sample size, which is 48. Okay, so that's for cumulative frequency. Now for the last part of the last column of the FDT, we have the relative frequency. So for the relative frequency, that is F divided by N times 100. So every frequency will be divided to N, or the sample size, or the total number of data, times 100. Since ang relative frequency po is about the percentage, and remember, the highest percentage is always 100%. Okay, so determine the relative frequency of each class interval. So the first class interval, first frequency, we have 8, and then i-divide lang po natin siya sa n. Kasi it's f divided by n. So 8 divided by 48 times 100, and that is equal to 16.67. And it's actually 16.6666 and a long decimal, but just get the two decimal point, and then ira-round off nyo na lang yung uh, pangalawang decimal point depending on kung ano yung katabi niyang number. Remember, pag nag-round off, basta it's 5 and up, you will add 1, and then if it's 4 and down, okay, just remain and or stay yung number. Then 4 divided by 48 times 100, that is equal to 8.33. And then next 6 divided by 48 times 100, that's 12.50. And then we have the next frequency is 8. Solve na natin kanina. Para hindi na kayo magta-type sa calculator, kopyahin nyo na lang, siya rin lang naman yung lalabas na result. 16.67. And then another 8, 16.67. And then nasolve nyo na rin yung 6. That's 12.50. And 6, 12.50. And for the last frequency, we have 2. So 2 divided by 48 times 100, that is equal to 4.17. And then add all the relative frequency, that's 16.67, 8.33, plus 12.50, plus 16.67, plus 16.67, plus 12.50, plus 12.50, plus 4.17, and that's actually equal to 100.01. But if you round that up into, if you round it off into whole number, that is approximately equal to 100, and it's 100%. Dapat po sa relative frequency, it's equal to 100% or approximately equal to 100%. Okay, so this is how the FDT, ayan, in-add up mo lang. And this is how the frequency distribution